Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, I'm your host, Gail Nowak, and today we're speaking with Veronica Worth, visionary entrepreneur, intuitive, award-winning designer, and creative maverick. Veronica has brought her innovative and big-picture approach to successful careers in the entertainment, advertising, and food industries, and especially to her current business, Design Bistro. Veronica put herself through design school, decorating and delivering wedding cakes for the family business, and in fact, she graduated with honors, received an award for excellence in creative projects from the French Culinary Institute, and cooked at the James Beard House as a pastry chef representing Norma's Restaurant. She's still winning awards today for her brand and web design work, including the 2018 .com Platinum and Marcom Gold Awards for web design. And before founding Design Bistro, Veronica taught yoga for 10 years and co-authored the groundbreaking book, Yoga for Equestrians. This year, Veronica was keynote speaker at Sustainable Success in Manhattan, appeared on the Soul Purpose Success podcast with Renee Lee, and will be an upcoming guest on Jamie Jensen's podcast. So I am super excited to welcome Veronica and talk with you today about vibrational branding. Welcome, Veronica.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Gail.
You are so welcome. So why don't we start with talking a little bit about the big problem that you help your clients solve?
Sure. I think really the main common thread that I found through all my work with my clients is that that their branding isn't always designed and positioned to be out in front of them, ahead of the curve. I find that most traditional branding approaches people kind of right where they are in that present moment, and with a little bit of room around that. But I've heard so many clients say, I just did a rebrand, and 6 months later, I'm already outgrowing it, outpacing it. And I really help them solve the problem of outgrowing their brand really fast, or it not being relevant in a short time, so that it's really designed to be designed to be positioned out in front of them to actually help draw them forward and stay that way.
What are some of the advantages of designing in that way and using that approach?
A couple things. One is that it's the way that I work, and the way that I'm able to do that is that I really tap into a much deeper levels than are normally accessed in a normal branding situation. Essentially, we work beneath the conscious mind. So I really get, first, because you can think your way through a great strategy, right? And you can have the best strategy possible, but it all comes from the logical mind, which is not a bad thing as part of the process. But what I've really found is that the key to getting that visionary aspect to somebody's brand is really getting beneath the surface of that logical mind. We really tap into what's going on a heart and soul level, and beyond that, what's going on at an energetic level. I mean, if anybody dabbled in quantum physics, we know all things are energy at the end of the day, and everything is energy before it becomes into the physical realm. So we can extend this to everything, including our business. And what I have found working with my clients is that when I bring really tap into that visioning aspect of their brand, we're really able to see what's being formed up on the energetic realm before it's even becoming physical. So we have now a window into not something that's a construct of the mind or of the will, like these are my goals and this is what I want to do, but really a co-creation between that person, that client, and their bigger work in the world, their soul's calling, and even a co-creation with spirit. It's really a beautiful aspect, and suddenly it becomes this much bigger picture, and much more fulfilling picture. So.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, both of us having been sort of in the advertising industry and knowing a bit about how that branding process works from an analytical sense and a logical sense, and also from an emotional sense. I mean, I think that in the advertising world, it's the blend of those two things. But I love what you're saying about really going deeper with that, and it's beyond the emotional piece. That a brand has what you're talking about because it feels different, right?
Right, exactly. And it's true that we are much more complex, beings than our mind gives us credit for. And we've all, I think, had an experience at some point or many points in our lives when we knew something, we had a hunch, our gut told us something, our body told us something, and we had no mental reasoning to back that up. But at some point realized that gut reaction was correct and absolutely right on point. And even though it took the mind a while to catch up to that accuracy, and it's that ability that we feel things, we sense things way before the brain has a chance to process information. And it's that factor that I really have worked hard to weave into my process, because I believe that's the most powerful and the most accurate, right? You want to, well, I won't get ahead of myself, but if you can spark people with that feeling, that gut hit, that sense, and have it be fully aligned with who you are and what you're creating in the world, like that means you're signaling the exact people that you need to and want to attract. Like those are the people that you're speaking to on that very gut level, very deep level.
Yeah, and it's like this, we've talked about this before. I've had that experience of, just being so drawn and pulled in, and not being able to let it go. And to be able to have a brand that does that like people just can't stop thinking about it because they're so drawn to your brand and what you're representing, is very powerful.
It really is, and I know you've relayed a couple experiences of your own to me, Gail, and on that, and I think your listeners or your audience too can, if they think a minute about a company or a brand that they just adore, and think about that for a minute. What is it really? I mean, you can go down the list of all the mental, kind of the mental list of all the qualities. But what's really, it's the feeling at the end of the day, because something can have all that fit all that criteria, that list of things. But if you don't feel it, that list means nothing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And we talked about cars as an example of this a while back, and I went through this whole process recently in shopping for a car, and that's exactly what happened. I had my list of all the things that I wanted, and I kept trying these cars that had the things on paper. They ticked the boxes on the paper, but for whatever reason, I got behind the wheel of several different cars, and I walked away. It just wasn't the right thing until it was, and I knew. The instant it was the right thing, I knew this is my car.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
it. And it overrides
like
everything, right?
It overrides everything. Thankfully, it did have those other things, those other boxes ticked
Yeah.
off. But it was just like, this is what I'm looking for, and that's what you're able to do for your clients too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are some of the common myths or misconceptions about tapping into your brand at that sort of energetic and soul level?
Gosh, I think one might be, and honestly, I even struggled with this in myself when I was really kind of quote unquote coming out of the spiritual or the woo closet, in my business, and questioning, is this really valid? Are these softer, and again, I'm doing air quotes, are these softer qualities really valid? Do they really make a difference? Do they really matter? That's, we question, understandably, especially because our culture values facts and, analytics and all that so highly, and has historically not valued softer skills as much. I believe that's changing now, but I think our mind wants to doubt. So I find that's a myth that people don't commonly place as much validity or importance on, like the vibration of your brand or the vision that you have, the more the deeper vision that you have, your soul's vision that you have for your work, and also just sort of the overlap of personal, who you are as a person, your personal brand, and the business that you run. Again, kind of old construct of keeping that separate. And I really believe we're most powerful when those two things are blended. And so I think that's kind of one of the things too. There's a hesitation sometimes I find with people to really bring that deeper side into their business. It can feel a little scary at times, because it asks you to be more vulnerable at times, and people worry about how they might appear or come off to perhaps an audience that isn't quite, I'm not sure what I want to say there, but quite ready for that information or that depth of information.
But how do you sort of break through that fear? Because I think that the rewards really do outweigh the risks if you can get past the fear.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it just in the most basic way, it's just instilling trust in the people that I work with, and working with the right people. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's ready for this kind of work, and not everybody's business calls for this kind of work necessarily. Mm-hmm. I think I believe every business could benefit from this kind of work and this kind of approach. But people, I really work with people, intentionally work with business owners who are visionary and who work with their clients in a way that is on a deeper level, and because of that, need to tap into this kind of level of understanding, and it is important to distinguish themselves this way. And so I can speak that language and help them and hopefully instill trust in them that I can help guide them on this journey.
I love that. So can you share an example of how you've helped the client kind of through the process and help them create a brand that's representative of where they're going?
Yeah. Well, a couple examples. One is back toward the beginning of within the first year or two that I started my business, and this was before I was consciously and out loud, including this process in my work. But I was intuitively doing it because I've just always needed the big picture. I was always digging for the big picture of what was going on before I could design anything. So I had been enlisted to design a website and a rebrand for a environmental energy company here in Vermont, and you know, they had told me what they wanted, and so I did several approaches based on what they wanted, and I was still getting my feet, you know, securely rooted. So I was, and this is a fairly big company, so you know, I was a little scared, a little intimidated. I wanted to do a good job, you know, and so I did all the comps, the approaches I did based on what they had asked for, what their board was asking for, and I just threw in one because in my mind's eye, I thought, but I kept thinking, they're capable of so much more, and this is where I see them going. So I just did one wild card comp, one wild card approach, which was, and I just threw it in. I thought they'll never go for it, but it was really what I saw their highest positioning could be based on all the conversations that I had with their team members and what I really heard underneath the surface and felt underneath the surface that they really wanted to become to the people that they helped and how they wanted to affect change. And it ended up being the one they picked. and it was even my team members. I was co-creating with a couple of people at that point. And even my team members were like, I don't know. And I just thought, it's okay. I'll just throw it in. It'll be like, you know. And it was the one they went for in the end. And it was the one that landed, you know, really landed me. What do I want to say? It got me a lot of respect because I didn't toe the line, so to speak. I was actually innovating. Mm-hmm. And I saw something beyond what they had seen or spoken, beyond what they thought they communicated, but they actually did, you know, between the lines, so to speak. So, you know, I go back to that, and that the branding that they're still using the same branding. We don't work together. We haven't worked together in years now. We, you know, parted ways after that project. But, yeah, I mean, that brand is still that they still have that brand. And that was 5 or 6 years ago now.
Wow.
So, and it's still like the look of it and everything still serving them well. And the tagline, their tagline that I just came up with, you know, it just hit me. And that tagline is still their tagline. So it's just, you know, I knew because of the traction that it got and still has that it was and remains, you know, really spot on for them. And it really is a collaborative process with the client. And you go in with direction, but you really have to be able to trust one another, trust the process, and be open to letting these things kind of catalyze and spark and go down different roads, even if it sounds a little weird at first, and explore. And then suddenly you kind of both know and you've locked on to that bigger thing. And then everything else seems to click, I think.
So, yeah. So what would you say? So if you had, if you're being approached by a visionary or creative entrepreneur, and they're just sort of on the fence, they're like, I don't know, the brand doesn't feel like me anymore. What kind of advice would you give them as far as, you know, what questions should they ask when it comes to maybe making the decision to go about rebranding or designing a new brand using this kind of an approach?
Well, I kind of come at it sort of drill down, I guess. I usually ask, start with very basic. What's working and what's not? What's working about your brand and what's not working right now? Mm-hmm. And then how does it feel? What feels good about your brand, if anything, right now? And what doesn't feel? Like starting to go from the first what you think and then into how does it fit with your body? Like, how does it feel to you? What's the feeling you get? What aligns? What doesn't? Like, what do you not like? What just makes you, how does that feel? Like, get into that experience a little bit and I try to, express too that if they're feeling it, their website visitors, their potential clients are very likely also feeling very similar things. And then based on that, going forward, and then I usually, again, start with asking, where do you see yourself? Where would you like to see yourself? And what would you like to see expressed in your brand that's not being expressed right now? And then I started to understand really what kind of where they feel they're headed. And that usually leaves gives a lot of breadcrumbs, if you will, and signals of kind of what's the potential there. Are they really ready for a rebrand? Not always, but usually by the time people are wanting to have a conversation, they're pretty ready they know something needs to change, even if they don't know exactly what it is. And then the other question is just how important is it to you? Like, what are you, again, weighing? Like, what's the cost of staying where you are in your brand? Because, because sometimes I try to get people present to how important is it to go forward with this, and how important is it to you and your business to do it in this way. Because let's face it, there are plenty of options out there. You could DIY yourself a Squarespace site, in a day for very minimal cost. So why do you need me? So I really want I want to serve the people I work with, in a way that is best for them. So if it's not, if you're either not at that point yet where it's really valuable to you to have this kind of insight and a brand that really, really resonates deeply with you and your potential clients, then I may not be the person for you. This may not be the depth that you want to go.
Right.
So it's just getting them clear on that. And I'm really there in an act of service to help somebody get clear. I have no interest in pulling somebody in to work with me if, just to have the job. That's no fun for anyone. So it's really helping you get clear on what are your needs really, and what's most important to you. And if we align, then, I'm thrilled to help you and support you on that journey. But I think it's just really, as much as I can, just bringing awareness to those different aspects and getting people in touch, I think, with the feeling, how they're really feeling, and how maybe it could feel, and what would that be like? Is that somewhere you want to go? Is that something that's important to you? And if those are yes, then going forward from there.
Absolutely. So you have some really interesting experiences, work experiences. It's pretty varied, and I love that it's as varied as it is, because I imagine that there's a lot of that is informing what you're doing today. But what inspired you to become the creative maverick that you are today, and to sort of leave some of those previous work experiences behind, and yet continue that creative thread into what you're doing today and what you're doing going forward?
Gosh, I don't know if there was ever actually a particular moment in life that catalyzed that, but I just have always been highly creative, and I've always been, as I think it's Marie Forleo that coined the phrase multi-passionate entrepreneur. I used to think it was a detriment, right? I mean, when I first started in the workforce, it was, you were supposed to stay at a job for 10 years, 5 or 10 years, and show continuity and consistency. And if you jumped around a lot, it was considered a very negative, black mark on your resume. And of course, I was all over the map, and always feeling like why can't I settle into one career? But I think for me, it's just, I have a highly active mind. I have a million ideas going on at once, almost all the time. And I get, I can tend to get, I don't like stagnation. And so I think it was really me just always wanting, just sort of a natural part of my personality is that I always want to push edges. I always wanted to see what was possible. Always felt like I saw better ways to do things than people, wherever I was working, whatever it was, whether I was like a secretary, in a company or, or making pastry in the kitchen. I was always like reinventing things so that seeing if there was a better way. How could we, further this? How could we better meet our customers' needs? How could we better express this, goal or whatever it might be in that situation? And I think for a long time, I didn't really see the continuity between the different careers that I had, but doing some inner reflection after a certain point, and I kind of scanned back through, working in the entertainment industry and working in the food industry and working in corporate and in advertising. And I thought, what's the common thread? And I thought it's that creativity. Like I always had to do something creative wherever I was. I was hungry for it. And, and that made a lot of sense to me then. I thought, well, yeah, that's it. It's always, even though the milieu was different at different times, the creative process that I was doing was actually very similar in each career. And I feel the best now that I have my own business, because I can evolve within the construct of my business. I'm not constrained, right, by somebody else's business model. I can evolve my own business as I evolve. And if I get excited about, expanding into new thoughts and new ideas and new areas, then I can create my business to encompass that. And that lights me up. And with that, I never get bored and I never get stagnant because I get to create, right? I get to keep creating and co-creating with amazing people. So, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, it's no wonder that we get along so well. So I relate to everything you just said.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Oh, gosh. So can you share a lesson that you learned early on that still impacts how you do business today?
I actually go back to my youth, and I had my godparents were very, very influential in my life and my upbringing, and mostly in the area of probably in the focus of that was probably food and wine and the pleasures of the table, I guess. But the lesson that they taught me that I really encompassed or distilled over the years is that what's important is how it feels to you. And what I mean by that is, you know, we would go out, you know, to, let me go back here. Let's see. They were great. They were firm believers in the value of experience and having wonderful experiences. Mm. My aunt actually used to say to me when I was quite young, if you have money to spend, like, don't spend it on, you know, how did she say it? It wasn't that not to spend it on things, but if you have to choose between things and experiences, spend it on experiences, because experiences will last you a lifetime. But they never did anything because, like, we went to beautiful, amazing restaurants and things like the symphony and the opera, but we didn't go because it was the hoity-toity thing to do, because other people were doing it, because they cared about what people thought or how they looked or anything. They did it because they loved it and they thoroughly enjoyed it, and it brought them joy and made them feel fabulous. It was like how fun it was for a night out, right? Put on your nice clothes and, you know, we would all go out together and it would be an event, right? We would, like, just for instance, my uncle would make reservations. We would go to see the Nutcracker around Christmas. They'd say they were not rich people, but they would save their money for special occasions like this. They would save it up so that we could go and have an exceptional experience. So we would have the whole evening planned. We would put on our best duds and look very, very chic and stylish and feel wonderful. And we would go to the Nutcracker and enjoy the evening. And my uncle would help, like, you know, I remember him trying to get me to pronounce, like, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky. And he would help me learn about what we were watching and music, you know, where it came from, who wrote it, why it was important when it was done, and help me. So he helped me enjoy it. I wasn't just there because it was the thing to do. I was drinking it up. And then we would go, he would research and find this wonderful restaurant that he had heard about the chef. And so we would go after for a late dinner to this amazing place. And he would always end up, somehow at the end of the night, the chef would be at the table talking to my uncle. And, you know, we would be sharing drinks around the table, having closed down the restaurant because we were having such great conversation with the owners or with the kitchen staff, or, you know, and it was because he had this curiosity and also knowledge. They knew about the music. They knew about where we traveled. They knew about the restaurant or the food that was being prepared and brought to us. And it wasn't that sort of, it wasn't just intellectual knowledge. It was joyful knowledge. Like, it was knowing why it's so delicious, how wonderful this is, why the atmosphere matters. So sorry, I'm going way off the track here, I feel, but I guess the lesson in all that, and encapsulate this however you want, the lesson in all that was that it's the substance that matters. It's how it makes you feel that matters. Do it because it brings you joy. So to bring this around to your question a long way, sorry.
Don't apologize, because it's awesome. I totally get it.
So it's funny, and I haven't relayed these stories to anyone in ages. So I guess that really got instilled in me at a very young age, this delight, this deep, like, joy of spirit around, and kind of adventure, too. You mentioned adventure earlier, and it was just, like, those are some of the most fun memories I have in my lifetime of times like that with them and my mom. And So I think it's really that has come forward with me through everything I've done, because I guess in some way I'm always trying to share that with the people I work with. And I remember when I was in the food industry, I was always trying to create that kind of joy and adventure and excitement and delight for the people that I was cooking for, even if I never met them face to face. Like, I remember coming up with thinking up desserts, and it was like, how can I help them? How can I help them feel this way? How do I want them to feel? How can I lift them up? So it just translates again, like, into what I do now with the branding. It's like, how can I translate this into feeling? How can I elevate this to a point? It's not good enough it's not enough if it just looks great or answers all the questions or meets all the criteria. It's like, how does it feel? And I have a huge smile on my face right now as I talk about this, because it's like, I want you to experience that joy,
right?
So through whatever's created, like, I want it to be laced with that. How can I help you create that? How can I help you create that for your clients?
How can someone find out more about you and Design Bistro and your soulful brand and evolvative branding methods?
Well, probably the easiest way right now is to go to my website, which is design-bistro.com. And I think for this too, you can email me directly at veronica@designbistro.com.
Until next time, remember, be your best story and share your positive news now.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.